All right, we are on page 279, so please make sure you're on page 279. And we're on lesson 6.7. The objective of this lesson, which you will write under the essential question, we will add and subtract mixed numbers with unlike denominators. Okay, so make sure you write that down. We will add and subtract mixed numbers with unlike denominators. And so we have a very important word here, the word mixed. So when we're talking about mixed numbers, what do you think we're talking about? Think. What are mixed numbers? Okay, well, a mixed number would be a whole number mixed with a fraction. So when we have a fraction and whole number, we have what is called a mixed number. Okay, so just, this is very important that we understand. Let's go ahead and unlock the problem. Please read it with me. Ready, begin. Denise mixed 1 4/5 ounces of blue paint with 2 1/10 ounces of yellow paint. How many ounces of paint did Denise mix? And so here we need to follow our steps, right? We read the problem, and now we need to highlight the important information. So you need your highlighter, and I just had mine. Oh, here it is. So what is the important information? Why don't you give it a try? I'll give you a second to do that. What would I highlight? Okay, if you said 1 4/5 ounces, you are correct. If you said 2 1/10 ounces, you're correct. And the question, what is the question asking us to do? Well, it's wants us to know how many ounces of paint did Denise mix. So to know what she mixed, in other words, is telling us that she put it together, right? So that's kind of a key word there. It's mixing, that means we're putting it together. And what did she mix? Well, ounces of paint, right? So we want to look at the question that says Denise mixed 1/4 ounces of blue and 2 1/10 ounces of yellow. So what type of operation are we going to do here? Think. What kind of operation based on that information? And so this is my step where I'm going to note what comes to your mind of what I need to do. What operation should you use to solve the problem? If you thought it was addition, you are correct. We are going to add those two fractions, or I should say, those two mixed numbers. Now, do the fractions have the same denominator? So now we're looking at the fractions, 4/5 and 1/10. Do they have the same denominator? If you said no, you are correct. They do not have the same denominator because one has a 5 and one has a 10. So we're going to add 1 4/5 plus 2 1/10. To find the sum of mixed numbers with unlike denominators, you can use a common denominator. That we learned yesterday. If you have different denominator, you want to find the common denominator and then find the equivalent fraction, right? But before we do that, our first step would be to estimate that sum. How can we estimate the sum of 1 4/5 and 2 1/10? Okay, this you need to pay very close attention so that you can understand it. And we're gonna go, I'm gonna refer back to that lesson where we had to look at our benchmarks. Do you remember what are our benchmarks? Okay, if you don't remember, let me remind you. Our benchmarks are 0, a half, and 1. What does that mean? That when we're estimating, you want to round out to either 0, a half, or 1, wherever it's closest to. So in our problem, we have 1 and 4/5. So we have one whole number, but we want to round out the fraction. So we need to decide if 4/5 is close to 0, is it closer to a half, or to 1. To do that, you want to look at the numerator and compare it to the denominator. 4 is very close to 5. Right? 4 is very close to 5. That means that it's very close to a whole number. So I'm going to round that to a 1. And now when you round it out, okay, I have 1 from the fraction and that 1 whole number. So 1 plus 1 equals 2. So I'm rounding 1 and 4/5 to 2. That's kind of saying like, okay, I have 1 whole pizza and 4 slices or 5 slices of another pizza. So in this case, I can say that I have close to 2 pizzas. So that's just an example of how this makes sense to round it to 2. Now let's work on the other one. Plus 2 and 1/10. 1 over 10. So 1 out of 10 is closer to 0, a half, or 1. Well, think about it. Half of the denominator, or half of 10, is 5. So a half would be 5/10. That means that 1/10 is closer to 0, right? So that means that I'm going to add 2. So 2 plus 0, because I'm rounding the fraction to 0, will be 2. So my estimate is going to be 2 plus 2. And 2 plus 2 equals 4. So that is my estimate. 2 plus 2 equals 4. That means that when I'm finished with my answer should be very close to 4. Step number 2. Oops. Find a common denominator. Use the common denominator to write equivalent fractions with like denominators. So now, what we're going to do is find the equivalent fractions of these whole numbers. And so remember, our strategy to do that is that you want to write the multiples of both denominators and find the least common denominator. I'm writing LCD, an abbreviation for least common denominator. So my multiples of 5 is 5, 10, 15, 20. I'm going to stop right there. And now the multiples of 10, 10, 20. I'll stop right there. And do you notice that we have a couple common denominators here? The 10 and the 20. But which one is the least? Well, you can't see that. Which one is the least one? Which one's the smaller one? 10. That is correct. Your smaller one is 10. So I'm going to write I'm going to carry over my whole number. Don't forget that, because that's something that students tend to do. They tend to forget to carry over the whole number. And now my common denominator is 10. And then I have here 2, and my common denominator is 10. But this one is really, I'm leaving it the same way, right? Because it has the same denominator. It already has the 10 as a denominator. So I'm just going to rewrite it to 2 and 1/10. But now we have to find the equivalent fraction of 4/5 with the denominator of 10. To do that, remember, 4/5, so 5 times what number will give me 10? 5 times what number equals 10? In that, if you said 2, that is correct, right? So if I had to multiply by 2 to get 10, then I need to multiply the 4 by 2. What's 4 times 2? 8, correct. So that is my equivalent fraction of, the equivalent fraction of 1 and 4/5 is 1 and 8/10. So now I am ready to add, because my fractions have the same denominator. And you want to add the fraction first. Why do you want to add the fractions first? Well, in case you have a fraction bigger than 1, you can regroup. In this case, 8 plus 1 equals 9, 10. So that's still less than 1. And now add your whole numbers. 1 plus 2 equals 3. So Denise mixed 3 and 9/10 ounces of hemp. Oh, sorry, but you weren't able to see that. 3 and 9/10 because we added. Let's do the other example. I want on your own, you're going to answer questions 1 and 2. And then I'm gonna go over page 208, another example. Here we have subtraction. So I know the marker kind of went over. But we have subtract 4 and 5/6 minus 2 and 3/4. So the example says you can also use a common denominator to find the difference of mixed numbers with unlike denominators. Okay? So you can also use a common denominators to find the difference of mixed numbers and unlike denominators. So we use the same strategy when we are subtracting mixed numbers. And we're going to start by finding our estimation. So 4 and 5/6. Remember, our benchmarks are 0, a half, and 1. So here our fraction is 5/6. Is 5/6 closer to 0, a half, or 1? Well, look at your numerator. 5 is very close to 6, so I'm going to say 1. And so 4 and 1, that would be 5, right? Because I have a whole number, and I'm going to round my 5/6 to 1, so I'm going to regroup it, and that's 5. And then that's minus 2 and 3/4. Is 3 closer to 4? Yeah, right? Because my denominator is 4, half would be 2/4. So 3/4, actually that's debatable, right? I mean, if you say that it's closer to a half, that would be also correct. But in this case, I'm gonna round it up to I'm gonna say 1. So in this case, if I round it to 1, then 2 and 1 equals 3. So my estimate is 5 minus 3, and that is equal to 2. So that's my estimate, 2. Now, I need to move on to step 2 to find the common denominator and use that to find the equivalent fractions. So here we have the problem. 4 and 5/6 minus 2 and 3/4. So now, I need to write the multiples of my denominators, 6 and 4. So I'm going to write them here, 6 and 4, and I'm going to write the multiples. You know what, let me do it a different color. So we're going to do 6. What's after 6? Multiples, 12, and then add another 6, 18. I'm going to stop right there. Now let's do the 4. 4, 8, 12. Oh, look. See, I'm not even going to keep going because I already see that I have a common multiple. And this is our least one, right? This is the smallest one. So that means that my common denominator is going to be 12. So I'm going to carry over my 4, and then I'm going to write 12 as my denominator. Minus 2, and then 12 is my denominator. Now I need to find the numerator, and for that I need to look 4 times what number will give me 12. So basically what I'm doing is, and I'm just breaking it down. If you can just do this on the side, but if you're still confused, I'm saying 4 times what number will give me 12, because 12 is my denominator. So if you said 3, you are correct, right? 4 times 3 equals 12. So if I multiply the 4 by 3, I need to multiply the 3 times 3. What is 3 times 3? 9, right? So that means that my numerator is 9. 9/12 is the same as 3/4. Those are equivalent fractions. Now I need to do the next one. 6 times what number equals 12? Okay, so 6 times what number equals 12? If you said 2, you are correct. And if I multiply it by 2, my denominator, then I need to multiply my numerator, which is 5, times 2. What's 5 times 2? 10, right? So there, I found my equivalent fractions, and now I am ready to subtract. So 10 minus 9 equals 1. Okay, my denominator always stays the same. And then 4 minus 2 equals 2. So the answer is 2 and 1/12. My estimate was 2. So that looks like that's the right answer because it's pretty close. All right, now I need you to go on Think Central and work the 2 problems.